A staggering 1,725 South African Police Service firearms have gone missing between April 2021 and July of 2023. Basically, this amounts to 61 firearms that are stolen every single month over the last 2.5 years. This shocking figure coming out during a parliamentary question to the National Police Commissioner, Fani Masemula. It's believed that these weapons may have been used in the country's violent crimes. So, joining us for this conversation is criminologist Dr. Guy Lamb, and alongside him is Director at Gun Free South Africa, Adele. Kirsten. Let me start with you, Ms. Kirsten, and ask you the question, is it surprising, therefore, that the majority of these crimes are committed using guns if 61 firearms are presumed to have been stolen every single month over the last 2.5 years?
So, Collie, I think, any loss or theft of firearms from any source endangers all of us and is a threat to all of our communities. We know that most guns that enter into the criminal market are legal. So either from the security cluster, the SAPS 13 stores, some of those might be illegal because those are recovered guns and they're part of the evidence store, or from licensed gun owners. So this movement, this easy availability of guns that enter the criminal market because of loss and theft from legal sources they end up in the hands of criminals, and that's why in our last quarterly crime stats, we posted almost 34 gun deaths a day. So it's not surprising that you're seeing this link between this year-on-year increase in murder overall, but in particular gun-related murder, and you're seeing this increase in the loss and theft of guns, which means that guns are easily available for the use by criminals. But to say that this is not something new in a way, because if you look at it, we look at the loss and theft on a daily basis, and the numbers that are coming through, these are the numbers that have been there for the last 10 to 15 years. So on average, over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a loss or theft of about 2 to 3 guns every single day by SAPS. Over the same period of 4 years, of the last 4 financial years, 25,000 guns have been lost and stolen from civilians, and that includes your private security industry. So I guess in a nutshell, we're having this massive influx of weapons. They're coming into the legal market, and then they're moving very easily into the illicit market, into the criminal market.
Dr. Lamb, let's bring you into the conversation. And I'm going to latch exactly on what Adele has said, and that is that this is nothing new. And year in, year out, we see the destruction of firearms by the South African Police Service. And this is all part of the effort to try and do exactly what the organization that is led by Ms. Kirsten is trying to do, to have a gun-free South Africa. What new questions do we need to put to law enforcement in order to try and answer why we have this problem?
Well, there are multiple questions that we can ask of law enforcement. So there are challenges around the loss and theft of firearms that Adele Kirsten has been discussing. I mean, we, as is pointed out, the kind of largest body or largest group where firearms are lost and stolen from are licensed, private licensed firearm owners. So in the last financial year, for example, there were more than 8,000 that were lost or stolen compared to close to 750 from police. So the issues around the kind of tightening up the controls there, which is one key element, both in terms of police holdings of firearms, both in terms of how firearms are licensed to people, particularly to high-risk people or people who may be at risk of losing their firearms or having their firearms stolen. So I think those are key considerations. The second issue is we don't often have a conversation about ammunition. So we have a lot of firearms that are in circulation. The police do confiscate a lot. The police do seize a lot. So there's around 45,000 a year. But it does vary from year to year, and those weapons, some of those weapons ultimately end up being destroyed. The police do encourage amnesties, so for people who don't want their firearms anymore to surrender those firearms. So there's the issue around ammunition, but we don't really have effective controls of ammunition. We seem to see a lot of kind of armed gangs. We see a lot of criminals who are using extensive amounts of ammunition. So it's clear that they don't have a problem with an ammunition supply. So that's one issue that we really need to be getting a handle on around to what extent are these individuals getting ammunition through legal suppliers and to what extent are they getting it through corrupt and kind of illegal means. So that's the one issue. The second issue is around very much around the Central Firearm Registry. So there have been challenges around, how the police administer this issue. There's been problems with the electronic system. They have been turning the corner on this, but there is a much better need for more effective control, real-time control of firearms in South Africa, and it's been this ongoing problem. And that really does hamstring the police's efforts to control the growth of the kind of sector on illegal firearms.
Yeah. Ms. Kirsten, you, through your organization, have been calling for a reinstatement or the reinstatement of the specialized firearms units. Where is that, and does it sometimes feel like you're fighting a losing battle?
Holly, it's a huge battle, and it's not just that of Gun-Free South Africa, but I think it's that of all of us. And in particular, we work a lot with women and community leaders in areas that are affected by high levels of gun violence. So I think, I think this is a societal response that's required, and it's an enormous challenge. In terms of where we're at on the re-establishment of the specialist firearms units, we have not done a follow-up. It is something we've called for. It is something that in a cabinet memo towards the end of last year, it was stated that cabinet agreed to the re-establishment of some of these units because we know in the past that they were very successful. So that is something for us to follow up on a bit more. But I think one of the interesting things in the responses to this question, and this is new, is that the ministers gave a lot of important detail. For example, one of the details, and I think it's one of the reasons why we're seeing some additional numbers, is this thing that they've put in place an audit. Now, this is a very, very important mechanism to help you track and trace, where are the guns, and in a way it's what we call tracing them from the cradle to the grave. And it's particularly important to do audits prior to weapons being destroyed.
Yeah.
So that's a very welcome bit of detail. I think the other important detail is their suggestion that they're exploring kind of enhanced technology to physically secure weapons when they're in the SAPS 13 stores. And we know from international agreements and our obligations there too, that the physical security of weapons once they've been recovered is a critical measure of a state's ability to ensure that weapons don't move out the back door. But they give some detail. But again, organizations like Gun-Free, part of our job now is going to be, say, at the quarterly crime stats, is what's happened with your enhanced security around your stockpile management. So I think there's a lot of information that enables organizations like us, but also a parliament. This is a really important reminder of the role that parliament plays in keeping the executive to account. This was a question asked from an MP and a response from our government. That's good democratic practice and enables civil society organizations then to engage in a very, very different way when we have that kind of information available.
Guy, I see you nodding when Adele spoke about this audit that the executive seems to be introducing. I'd like for you to talk to us about that in tandem with the effective management of the Central Firearms Registry, because that is what many people are putting their hopes on, that it is going to ultimately prevent gun violence.
Well, I mean, certainly it will. I mean, we know if there's a kind of a system in place that prevents the wrong people who are more predisposed to gun violence, to use guns illegally, to use guns irresponsibly, from not getting firearm licenses, but also from a system that has a kind of real-time effective check on the number of weapons that are under the police, for example's control. So the police will confiscate, seize weapons, will receive weapons in terms of amnesties, and those weapons go into these police armories at the station level, often known as SAPS 13 stores. But up until recently, these kind of stores have all been a manually based system. So it's sort of like written down registers, which means that it's very difficult for kind of police to maintain effective control of them. It's also open to corruption, it's open to theft, it's open to mismanagement. And we've seen in the past weapons going missing from these 13 stores, often as a result of corruption, where you've seen corrupt officials who have been linked to gangs or to criminal networks who have been stealing weapons from these stores. And in the absence of some sort of system and some sort of effective tracking system, we really don't know what's going on. So, for example, about 10 years ago, a parliamentarian asked the question of the Minister of Police, can you tell me how many firearms are in the SAPS 13 stores? And he couldn't answer the question, because the response was you would need every single 1,100 police stations to do an audit and then submit that sort of information. So having some real-time system, I mean, it's really encouraging that the police are moving in that direction, because I think it will make a major difference in terms of the leakage and diversion of weapons that are under the police's control. But also that sort of system at the Central Firearm Registry, from a licensing point of view, it keeps a kind of an indication on, preventing certain individuals from acquiring firearm licenses, having a proper idea of where these firearms are and who the individuals that are associated with them, determining whether they've got criminal records or not. So I think it would make the police's life a lot easier in terms of the management of firearms, but also it would contribute to increased safety in South Africa too.
Ms. Kirsten, can I quickly close this conversation with you with this question, and the message to individual gun owners? These are people who are concerned about their safety and are saying, well, there's so much criminality in South Africa and most of it perpetrated using a gun. And so I need to protect not just me, but my family. What is your message to those people, particularly around the handling of these firearms, that they don't lose them?
Well, I think the message is clear, and we have to look at the evidence and what the data shows us. And what it shows us is that when you have a gun in the home, it presents a whole range of risks, from suicide, from unintentional injury, intimate partner violence, and loss and theft, which of course is not your fault that your gun is being stolen and that there's such high levels of crime. But having a gun does not make you safer. It in fact increases your risks of death and injury. So it's best not to have a gun in your home, and we have to, as communities, explore alternative ways of keeping ourselves safe.
Adele Kirsten, Director at Gun Free South Africa, thank you very much for your time and indeed your contribution to this conversation. And to you, Dr. Guy Lamb, thank you very much for your contributions. A criminologist is what Dr. Guy Lamb does.